Hello, all, and welcome to the July tier list for Command and Conquer Rivals. So, this is just a quick screenshot as to what was decided upon for last month. We now are carrying forward 1 month later with more information in regards to the meta and how it's developed. We're just going to kind of go briefly over how the meta kind of looks now, 1 month later, and we will also include our commanders. So we'll start with that. So just kind of going over that quickly here. We'll go strong arm. I mean, strong arm is probably like B, maybe A. It feels like there's a lot of infantry and air right now, which it's pretty good against. Obviously, it's bad against like Pitbull, but tanks still kind of hold it down. So I'd probably go strong arm in B, maybe C, like high C, low B for sure. Liang might be trash, like for sure trash, right? So we're putting Liang in trash along with the battering ram. What else we got? McNeil. Ooh, McNeil is very touchy for a lot of people, I'm sure. But I would probably go McNeil as like A, I think. High B, low A. A lot of people are kind of, over. I don't want to say over exaggerating. Like he does feel strong at certain points in the game. Um, but I definitely do not think that he is anywhere near S tier. And even like saying that he's A tier, I don't know. Like by default, he's the best GDI commander right now because he does have the best ability. So he does deserve to be up there. But I would say low A, high B is probably where he would be ranked accordingly. Solomon, I don't remember where I put Solomon last month, but I think Solomon, I don't know. I mean, Solomon is what it is at this point, right? I think Solomon is probably C, high C, low B. Um, I mean, you got to kind of be more concise with Solomon, and now you're hitting your ion cannons, and obviously a misclick is very detrimental to using a commander power. So any like bad Solomon could take you right out of the game. It could also win you a game, but it's a little too, you know, it's not dependable enough for you to consistently win games with Solomon. I don't think so. I don't know if I would go too high with Solomon. And then Jackson would probably be, I would probably say Jackson is same tier as McNeil. A, probably low A, like right on straddling again. So high B, low A. I think Jackson and McNeil are probably the two best commanders. Obviously, being nullified by McNeil is a very tough pill to swallow in the game, where this is a game of microseconds. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think it's still second best, and it's a lot more consistent and reliable for its commander power. The only issue is that because it just gets nullified by a McNeil trap um, for whatever unit is boosted in there, it does make it very. So I mean, the irony of calling it consistent and everything. Like if you're not going against McNeil with Jackson, then Jackson feels very good, right? So we'll throw that out there for commanders. And what else is missing? Yeah, battering ram is missing, but that's obviously trash. So trash would be Liang and battering ram, and then you have probably A tier would be McNeil, Jackson. B tier for Solomon. B tier for what's it the gun the strong arm, right? And then yeah, that's it. Very professional. I would like to say. So we do have some unit modifications in terms of what I think is moving down or up for this month after one more month of play. I would like to preface this all by saying, I mean, I think that I'm kind of settled on what I think is the best GDI deck. So that's kind of, it is what it is. The other complementary pieces for the other decks that I've been going up against for GDI, I'm probably going to be moving up slightly. So the first move that I would be making here would be the MLRS going from B tier to A tier. So I kind of like the MLRS right now, especially with the GDI Fortress that a lot of people are playing. Um, it is a very tough unit to go against. Combine that with shocks and the slingshot to complete your fortress. So you have shocks for infantry, MLRS for your vehicles, and then Razorback or sorry slingshot for air. It makes it a very formidable combo at this point in time to go up against, and really really tough. So I mean that's just the nature of fortress gaming, where you know they're sitting tight, playing one tile to one tile until they can push forward and kind of you know take over the game. So that would be my first move, moving up MLRS. And so by virtue of moving up MLRS, I think APC does in fact go down in tier. So with the how good MLRS is appearing to be for GDI decks, especially against Fortress, like playing APC is probably not the greatest thing at this point in time. So I would move down APC to the C tier. Um, yeah, I mean, it really is going to be tough gaming with APC, especially with the prevalence of tanks on both sides, as a matter of fact. And I mean, the Grens definitely give it a tough matchup as well. So I think APC should not be as high as the B tier there. Um, Another move that I would like to make would be the Grenadier, as a matter of fact, since it is in my best or what I think is the best GDI deck. So I think moving it up to A tier is the place to be. Um, Missile Razorback and Grand Razorback have proven to be very, very strong in the current metagame. And I mean, it feels pretty good overall. Like, there's nothing that's like necessarily like holding it back. It feels Grens feel amazing against Nod, which is kind of crazy. I mean, Nod definitely has their anti-infantry problem, so having a high tier infantry like Grenadier against Nod is pretty helpful. Um, Although I did say that the Fortress gaming has been pushed up, I think Shock should still be B tier just because I mean Razorback and Sniper are the two better options for. So I think Razorback and Sniper are like the two best anti-infantry options right now for GDI. Um, it's just much better option in terms of running shocks. You could just play snipers. I mean, obviously snipers with the high skill cap does make it a little tough, but Razorback flying Raider unit is just wreaking havoc all over. So I think that's there. We'll get to MG shortly. Or I would like to say Slingshot might go up to A, but I'm not fully convinced. Just because against like Borka and against Inferno, if you're not well positioned with the Slingshot, then I mean you could be in trouble. And making pit bulls instead of making a slingshot seems much more reliable. Um, I think that's really all that needs to be said. Oro did just mention that maybe MG should go up, and I think that MG should probably go up right now. Um, I mean, I've seen a lot of no harv MG. I don't know though, like propping it up by default, mainly because playing MG, especially no harv MG against Nod, kind of feels like auto win just based off of like a lot of the Nod decks that are like currently up at the top. So MG against Nod feels very good. MG against GDI though is a separate issue. But I do think that it is a little bit better than these units right here. So I think we can move MG up a little bit, up to the B tier here, because it is, somewhat playable. I mean, we've had ECH played against ECH for a bunch of games now, and he's, I mean, however binary it is, like if you're queuing in with Nod, and then you have to take on no harm MG. Like you're just like, what do I do? Unless you play Seth, then that might be. But I mean, they could just surround the MG with like dogs or riflemen or something to kind of take out Seth very quickly there. So it is a little tough, but it does feel like it should be up from C to B. I would maybe also like to include Borka by virtue of GDI Fortress being an additional like gameplay, like seeing a lot more play now up top, um, where Borka can just kind of wreck fortresses, right? But aside from that, like this, I find that it's a little bit still too inconsistent. Except if you're double harv Borka spamming, then and you could just take over the game with Borkas, then maybe that kind of gives you a good shot. But I mean, aside from that, like it still is a little bit inconsistent in its overall gameplay. And you kind of want to play if you're playing Borka, then you kind of almost have to play Jackson with it. So I'm sort of reluctant to move it up because I don't think it's super well stronger or on the same power level as these units right here. Um, by default, I would also actually like to move the militant down to C tier just because of sniper and razorback. So it's a little tough now running this because once GDI opens up these two units here with the razorback or the sniper, then I mean militants are, or sorry, riflemen are essentially like worthless on the battlefield. Um, so it makes it really tough to play, right? Oh my god! And then tech, obviously, not nothing more needs to be said. Um, there is uh, an argument to be made with zones where I was spitballing with Oro about the possibility of playing zone Razorback, where that could be kind of pretty strong. But like against if you're GDI against Nod, I think that would be really strong. But GDI versus GDI, like it's in a mirrored match where it's GDI versus GDI, then it would not be strong. So, you know, I would probably hold it down. Titan could be. Could Titan be? Titan Razorback could be again, sure. But I mean, I think with now the prevalence of missile and even like Grens, a lot of the Grens that I've seen Gren gameplay, um, yeah, like if there's going to be even more Fortress gameplay, then I think Titan could be up there. Like you can move Titan up one because then you can snipe the MLRS with the Titan, right? So I think it's good. Um, JJ's. I've tried JJ's. So the in terms of my best GDI deck, which was the uh, missile, missile, grenadier, pitbull, slingshot, razorback. I replaced the grenadier with JJ's JJT, and the JJT just doesn't hold up to Chuggy very well still. So like it's half of the HP of a grenadier now. So and it costs more than half. Like two JGTs is 80 and the Grenadier 70. So I think that the um, premium on Grenadier HP definitely depresses the JJT in its current state right now. It is funny to see it, being buffed by the MSV for sure. But overall, I mean, in terms of its like overall viability on the battlefield, it just doesn't feel great, and especially because it's not unblockable anymore. Then might as well just make missiles half the cost and can shoot air. So Talon, Talon is in like such a bad spot right now. I feel very bad for people that still. Oh my god. I feel very bad for people that play Talon now because it feels very rough. Well, looks like we got some editing to do. Um, yeah, Talon just doesn't feel very great right now. Like it's a 30 cost, but it there's nothing that it can like take down. Like it loses to Banshee, so it's like, well, why even play Talon at this point, right? So those are my general thoughts on GDI and how it works right now. Um, and that's kind of where I stand for this month for July. So that's the brief overview on how the month has gone. So what do we have? I mean, Missile and Pitbull still obviously nothing more to be said. Still the kings of GDI and the backbone of GDI. I think every two. Where am I putting McNeil? I said McNeil was like A, like high B, low A. Thought I said that McNeil and Jackson are probably the same, and I said that I think that McNeil is definitely currently overrated by a lot of people. Like a lot of people hate McNeil because of the you know any any game that you play where you're like actively forced to like you know your units suck and you're like actively debuffed, then that makes it a horrible experience for people, and people for sure remember that a lot more. So but generally speaking, like there's some maps where McNeil just feels useless, and there's some maps where like you know he's doesn't feel like very relevant. So I think just the overall experience for McNeil, for people going against McNeil, they tend to just remember like you know battlefield where it can take like two hexes in the middle or whatever. Like it's like you know and then they can't fight immediately, so people like always remember that, and they're just like, oh, it's too strong and it needs to be whatever. But like overall, certain situations where you, if you're a GDI player and you want to use McNeil, and then you can't use McNeil because that fight is not happening there, or you can't trap certain hexes, then it just feels useless. So I mean, it is what it is, baby. So yeah, I mean, obviously, Orca and Predator. I'm almost tempted to move Predator down one, but I think Predator is still a good unit in this current metagame, especially with a lot of Scorpions that I've seen. Um, the only issue is like the speed of the unit, right? So a lot of people are now pairing McNeil with Predator, which means you really, really have to focus on the pads. Because if you can't boost your Predator to get onto a pad, into an active engagement to like try to win you a pad near the end of a missile or something like that, um, you could be in big trouble. And for me, I'm not the greatest with tanks, so I find that a lot of I think that maybe Predator should go down to B tier, which I mean by default is still pretty strong. But pairing it with Jackson is the obvious play. But I think it's still a matter of experimentation for a lot of people as well. Why is MG B tier? I think MG is B tier because against Nod it feels very, very strong. And because of ECH as well, right? So uh, playing no Harv MG against Nod feels very strong. So that's why I pushed it up, because I'm like, if you're playing no Harv MG and then you play against Nod, you feel very strong against that. Against GDI, it's a little tough, but I had it in B tier previously, right? So, or sorry, I had it in C before, so I moved it up from C to B, just because I think the overall viability of it is a little bit better, marginally better by default, because it feels very strong against Nod. But then against GDI with Razorback and Sniper, it doesn't feel very good. Like C B is pretty is decently playable, I think. So I feel like that's fair enough. MG's like Giga, the unit is obnoxious, but the deck isn't that good. Yes, I agree. So there is the GDI tier list for July. Um, we'll probably take a look again next month and see how things go. In the meantime, we'll get Nod up and running here very shortly so that we can take a look and see what the Nod tier list is.